If you're here for the first time, go check out the Remix Pros. If you need custom t-shirts for your church, your fundraisers, any type of family event, this is the place to go. If you need custom t-shirts and you're trying to develop an apparel line for your team, business, or events, your schools, this is the place to go. Check out theremixpros.com. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. In today's show, I have a wonderful guest coming on, Sugey Gomez, and we're going to be discussing how your thoughts affect your feelings and how your feelings affect your behavior. After that, we'll have a discussion on how mental skills can be used as life skills, or mental skills being life skills too. And finally, we'll close out with self-awareness. Now, if you're listening to this, you should know that it's the beginning of the year. So I know you've set new goals, you've made new affirmations, you got all these things to do, but what's going to happen? When that first hurdle comes up? So once again, I want to welcome Sugey Gomez to the Sports Mastery Podcast. Sugey, tell my audience who you are and what you do, and what are some of your future educational goals right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Deshaun, for having me on. So currently what I'm doing, I'm a current student at John F. Kennedy University, a master's student. I'm a second year and continuing on to a Doctorate of Psychology, essentially getting licensed as a psychologist, and hope to help athletes as well as the general public to enhance their performance.
So if we were looking into the future in terms of affirmations and visualizations,
Yes.
You guys can just call her Dr. Gomez right now.
So sweet. There you go. Yes.
So we discussed before how thoughts affect feelings and how feelings affect behavior. I really like this topic because this is something that we talk about when I'm working with the parents and coaches of student athletes, emotional intelligence. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one big thing as being a student and knowing some learning this past year with sports psychology, a big one that they talk about is attuning or becoming aware of your internal thoughts and feelings. As you said, our thoughts and our feelings impact how we behave. So in other words, what we think in our head, whether it be negative or positive, is going to influence how we feel, and then in turn influence and impact how we behave and react. For example, maybe in the field or as a basketball player, whatever the case. So lastly, any misguided or inappropriate thinking usually leads to negative feelings and poor performance. Same goes for positive, right? If you have good internal thoughts and you're aware of them, then you're more likely to perform well. Again, it's not black and white, but that's the initial big picture of feelings and thoughts and behaviors.
Now you've worked with soccer athletes, am I right, in the past?
No, have not worked with soccer athletes. Right now I'm going to start working with softball athletes though.
Softball athletes. Maybe that's what I was thinking. And which athletes have you worked with in the past? I remember we were discussing kids at a particular school.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that was Richmond. So part of my program, my first internship was this past summer in the Bay Area. So we worked for 2 different sites, and one of them was in Richmond, California. It was a charter school, and we worked with high school. They were coming in as freshmen into high school, into this charter school. So we worked with them, and they were essentially in a very underserved community. And the charter school was in the middle of this community, and it was a raffle type of school. Like you literally got raffled in, and you were lucky in essence if you got in. So yes, I did work with them, as well as working with another program or site that had to do with girls skating and skateboarding, which was really neat to be able and be in that space as well. But back to your point, yes, I did work with athletes coming. It was a sport camp. It was more life skills directed, but definitely we promoted it as a sport camp in the summer. It was for a full week where Monday through Friday, I worked with these students.
So working with those students in that particular environment,
Yeah.
did you see any of this play out in terms of conversations or past histories or performances in terms of how thoughts affect feelings and how feelings affect behavior? What would be an example of how you saw that play out from a personal standpoint working with that group?
Yeah, absolutely. So one example that comes up is just as everything, you got to build rapport, right? You come into a new environment, new people, and so forth. You got to build and bring that trust in. I would say coming in, there was a particular student that I remember, and she, let's call her Rebecca. Rebecca, when at the start, all of us noticed, our whole cohort noticed that at the beginning, she was very, very closed off. We were unable to really even crack her at all. She was like, no, thank you. I'm just here and sitting here. We noticed that obviously there was something going on internally. We can't see it, but it was neat to see the progression from Monday through Friday, being with her every single day. We all worked in different like settings and we all had different groups and so forth. And I would say seeing her, like how her thoughts or her feelings, even her behavior, her body language showcased that there was internally something going on. There was no sense of a smile, no sense of anything. It was a big blockage of like, I'm not talking to anybody. I don't care. At the end, we noticed that as we build rapport, she started to really kind of flex into the environment and then be more interactive with us, which essentially, if you look at it, I guess, and as an assumption, her thoughts and her feelings started to change of the environment she was in. Maybe she was getting more comfortable. We don't know exactly. We didn't do like an assessment or anything like that with her. But at the end, her behavior changed, and it connected to more of a, maybe as I can presume, a more positive light, where she become more interactive with everybody else. She started smiling a little bit and getting more comfortable. So again, her thoughts and her feelings started to impact somehow, some way, where she started to behave differently and react differently to us being there as the camp counselors, for example.
Now, let me ask you this, and you can speak specifically to the young coaches out there, also parents at the same time, because you said something interesting about building trust,
Mm-hmm.
and I hear you talking about rapport building at the same
Right.
time. So if I'm a young coach and I'm listening to this, or if I'm a sports parent, even trying to build trust with my student athlete, reflect back on that experience, and what would you say to the young coach out there? What can they do to build trust with an athlete? Because those are one of the things that's really huge in the sports community, because if you can build trust, we really understand and we really believe that you can get further with the athlete in terms of production in the classroom and in the sporting environment.
Right. And the biggest thing that stood out for me is like showing that, going back to being a human, that humanness, that we are people, and sharing that you care, regardless of all the research or all the details or all the logic and all the skills, simply showing that you care. And for example, I am growing as like my philosophy as a future consultant, like coming from a more person-centered or humanistic approach. And with that, it's about them, right? And even like the first couple of months that you're building rapport and trust, it might not even have to do with anything about, hey, let's enhance your performance or let's get you better. Simply having a talk with the athlete and coming from human to human. At the end of the day, that's who we are. We're all here walking the path, trying to be better than we were yesterday. So I think from building rapport and trust is simply coming from a person to person, and none of this like all this decorations of everything, but just really showing that empathy and showing that care for that individual, saying, hey, I see you, I care for you, I'm here for you. Even those simple words of saying I notice you can go a long way. Keeping it simple.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. You know, we had discussed prior how mental skills being life skills too.
Mm.
How would you define mental skills?
So mental skills are the skills that help you enhance your performance. So they're the things internally in your head. Those are the tools, like your toolbox, that you can take away from that toolbox and be able to use them in real life. For example, that'd be concentration or focus, that'd be motivation, that'd be goal setting, that'd be self-talk. For example, say self-talk, that'd be what are you saying to yourself internally, which goes back to like self-awareness and looking at building that self-talk to better, meaning making it better than it was before. If you have negative thoughts, let's look at reframing that. Let's maybe look at doing a journaling to see and jot down what you're looking at and look at your internal thoughts, which then goes to also self-awareness.
So basically, what you're saying is that some of the things that we teach, and I definitely teach in terms of overcoming your fears, visualizations, goal setting,
Mm-hmm.
affirmations, you're saying that trickles over into life. So in terms of teaching mental skills for sports performance, you can often teach and take those same skills into life to enhance your life or life performance.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not just, and that's one thing that sports psychology definitely uh, shares all the time, that it's not just sport. Yes, it's there, and that's where this is all built off of research and so forth, but it can also translate easily to life skills. Like, for example, I'll give you one example for myself. Like, imagery is another mental skills technique that sometimes we actually instinctively do it and we don't know that we're doing it. Again, building that self-awareness, you'll start to see like, oh, I'm doing this. We just don't know. Again, we don't get taught, as I say, we don't get taught when we're young, hey, you should be more self-aware of your internal thoughts. So, but in any case, for example, imagery, like I tend to, I've done like for school as well, and for just speaking gigs in general, I use imagery a lot. Again, I used to use it instinctively without knowing until I got into sports psychology and realized that imagery is a big thing in sports psychology. And for example, using imagery before the night before performing, whether that be in the field or for me, for example, speaking, me seeing myself, like revisit that, me seeing myself out in the front doing my thing and speaking. But the big thing is it being vivid and controlled, for example. That in a sense is, can you be utilized? It doesn't have to be in sport. I can use that in my own life, in my own performance. And that is a pretty neat thing about these sport skills or mental skills performance to enhance you, that you can use, as I've used them in certain presentations or certain things that I'm going to perform. Even this conversation, I thought about it prior, before getting on here. What is it going to look like? What is it going to feel like? And I closed my eyes and I saw it was here. Also, like breathing techniques, huge one. Another one that can be used easily anywhere. For example, I use this sometimes where I'm driving and I do full on circle breaths, which is known in sports psychology, full like exhale and inhale. So again, life, I don't have to use it in a sport. I can use that anytime. You can do that. We can do that right now. And that in a sense is using it in life. So that's what I mean by all that. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And when we discuss like mental skills such as like imagery or visualization and doing affirmations,
Mm-hmm.
you can go back to the first time you've ever had to write out an affirmation or speak an affirmation to an existence, how weird it sounds, or like, why am I freaking doing this? What do
Right.
you have to say to the young coach or the young student athlete out there who might feel a little awkward chanting something in their room, worried about if their roommate or the parent or little brother or sister is going to hear them and maybe give them a hard time? How would you explain the importance to this to that type of an individual who might be affected or worried about what others might think or feel a certain way at the beginning?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is that building that rapport, right? Being able to trust you when it comes to advising. So I would say it like all things, like there's not one size fits all. Let's try it. Let's work on it. If it doesn't work, no big deal. It's okay. And I think that just that statement, like it's okay that if it doesn't work for you, then we'll try something again. And really giving it a try it out and see what comes up for you. And let's talk about what you're feeling when you do that, or what others are thinking. Let's talk about that more to see different ways of tools of how we can make sure you're comfortable. But I think like all things, right, as you do more and more and you're more consistent with it, it becomes more comfortable. So I would just come with that simple statement, like, let's try it. Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, then we'll try something new. It's not the end of the world. Like, in other words, it's okay.
So in your practice, where does journaling come in with all of this?
I do journaling. I think a lot of us, like my colleagues and classmates, we do journaling a lot. It's kind of well known. I tend, like, you're asking me if I do my own journaling
Or for the student athlete?
so it would depend, like everything, like I said, there's not one size fits all. Say, like, for example, maybe we're working on self-talk, which is, in other words, being aware of your internal thoughts. And they want to become more aware. How do I build my self-awareness on my self-talk? Journaling could be one in building awareness and building, what am I saying to myself in a certain moment or a specific moment in my sport? So for example, maybe they get a journal, we get that journal, and while they're practicing, they know, because we've had the talk, that they're aware, hey, I need to journal. So maybe they're out playing the field, they have a time to sit down, chill out, or maybe at the end of practice, they actually, in a specific maybe performance or part of a skill that they want to enhance, they write down their thoughts and feelings of what happened in that moment. And again, it's in that moment, it's allowing them to see what is happening for them in that moment. Because as yourself and myself, we're not going to be with our athletes or clients all the time. And to be able to go back and look at that retrospection, that's where that journaling comes. Because now we know, okay, this day and that day during this skill and that skill, you felt this certain way. Okay, what does that mean? So that would be in a scenario in a session where we'd work through that, and in practice, have like that journal with you, and what feels right for them, again, trial and error, then utilize it during pause times to be able to write your thoughts and feelings in that moment. And again, that builds us self-awareness. Then it connects to your self-talk. What does that look like? And when we identify that, then then the plan comes in.
Yeah, yeah. And as I listen to you, I'm thinking, there's always that athlete that struggles, and then all of a sudden they have a good game, and then they go back to struggling, then they have a good game. And I've been through this before with certain athletes, and I asked them, well, what were you feeling when you had the good game? What were you saying to yourself? What were your thoughts? What did you do 3 hours before the game? What did you do the night before?
Right.
And maybe think about that, journal it, and let's repeat that.
Right. And that's the big thing. Like, one thing is, okay, what did you think? That's great. And verbalizing is great, vocalizing. But one other thing is actually journaling it. Journaling is huge. The idea like of your mind connecting to a piece of paper makes a big difference as opposed to just vocalizing. And then one other thing that came up too with what you just said is like another way for them to be aware of their thoughts and feelings and what's happening in that moment. And it might be not necessarily an affirmation, right? You said affirmations, maybe they're like, oh, they're going to think I'm weird, or what's all that about. Another one can be video analysis, looking at maybe when we record them, you as a coach or myself as a mental skills coach, sit with them and go through this video with them. And in that moment, as opposed to journaling, they look at, okay, what happened right there? Now tell me in that moment, what were you thinking? And this is kind of retrospectively looking back, but it's having them see themselves in that moment and be in a safe space to be able to jot down or really reflect on what is happening in that moment. How did I feel? What were my thoughts? What were my feelings? And how did that impact my behavior? And going from that.
Excellent. As we get into the fourth quarter, I want to discuss self-awareness, the importance of self-awareness. So, before we start off into this part, how do you, in your practice, how do you define self-awareness?
In my future practice. Yes. I would say just simply being aware of your internal thoughts and feelings. A lot of times, so that's like the definition, keeping it simple. A lot of times we, even as coaches or athletes, we focus so much on, say, I mentioned to you this before, like the outcome, the outside, the winning, and we don't focus maybe on the process or the performance. If we focus more on the process and performance of the athlete, what they're thinking and their internal thoughts and feelings, then we're able to help them become more self-aware. A lot of times, because you're so focused on the outside or external of winning, you forget about you yourself and your own thoughts and feelings. So I would say, to answer your question, is simply your internal thoughts and feelings, is how you're feeling in that moment, is your self-awareness and being aware of that.
Yeah, I get that, because, I've had some athletes work with what they thought was a difficult coach. And if they're not taught how to deal with a quote unquote difficult coach, that's where those thoughts can manifest into feelings, and the feelings come into behavior as far as pouting on the sideline, walking away from the group and things like that. And I really see what you mean as far as being aware of your feelings and how you feel right now before that thought or that feeling causes you to act a certain way. So I think this is really good. And it's often difficult because sometimes it's just that inner voice that we don't even hear. And it's really, really subtle.
Right.
And you can look back over time and say, damn, I really messed that one up. We've all done it before. And this, it just goes to show the importance of self-awareness. Not only that, but also reflection.
Right. Absolutely.
Where does self-reflection play in this part about the importance of self-awareness?
I think one thing that we get taught as students, and something I'm going to take with me, can also easily translate for athletes and helping them enhance their performance, is like you said, reflection. There can be certain, like a template, certain questions that we can reflect on, you know, in that, say you have and a lot, again, I don't think a lot of people are taught to reflect, because like, oh, reflection, really, I'm going to sit and reflect on how I did. Okay. But it really does play a part in, like, for example, I when I go to internship, I am requested through my supervisor to reflect, the reflective practice, and look at, okay, what went well, what didn't go well, what's next. Again, simple, stupid. And that is simply getting me in that space of what just happened, how am I feeling, what went well, how can I make it better. And if we can help our athletes, or just people in general, to certain, like, major events, if that's what really is important and they value, to reflect back on how that made them feel and think, and how that impacted their behavior, that reflection will really help to bring more self-awareness as well. It's just this process, like that process, right? Trusting the process and being able to look back and reflect. Like, even with this call, like, after, okay, now I'm going to reflect on this. How did it go? How did I feel? And so forth and so on. Same thing goes for athletes when they're out there. It's maybe a shot they're going to do. They're going to perform something. Reflection is, it gives you a lot of information, inside data, if given the chance.
I like that. You know, for the young people listening out here, and especially the coaches, what are 2 books that you would recommend for the student athlete to build mental skills, or for the coach to go pick out a book and, you know, grab some nuggets out of it and then share with their student athletes if they weren't able to get to somebody like you?
Yeah, I think one of them that I think right now that I'm looking at my bookshelf is called Mind Gym. That is a really good book. Do you have it? I have it. I can go grab it.
I do have it. It's right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one. That's a good one for just general public. I think that's a great one.
Easy read.
Easy read, definitely. Another one, if someone wants to get really like in the weeds of it all and research, actually I have it right in front of me, which is a book that we are given for school. And it's called Applied Sports Psychology, Personal Growth to Peak Performance. So this is a really good, detailed book for people that want to know more about research and details, references, and all about sports psychology. I love this book. This is a great book. It takes, you're not be able to sit down and read the whole thing. You're looking at chapters. Within the chapters, you're going to grasp a lot of good information.
Right. I like that. Thank you. I'll look that up on Amazon after this. What do you want to leave my audience with?
Be more attuned to your thoughts and your feelings. I know it's not something that we get taught much, and be more aware of that, because it really, given the chance, our mind is so powerful. And if we don't discipline it, can take over us. It can not do very well for us. So I think just really being aware of your thoughts and your feelings and being attuned to that is so important, even though it's not so much promoted, and to have fun and to just take note of all that you are, including your thoughts, your body, and taking care of yourself.
Right. You know, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I think this is really going to be good to open the new year with, you know, in terms of sharing this conversation.
Right.
You have a website. What is on your website? What is that about?
So my website is suheyhealth.com. I will be updating it soon. So before sports psychology, I'm
sorry to interrupt you. I know your name is spelled different and unique. So could you spell that out so the audience can find that? And I'll also add links on the show notes page also.
Absolutely. It's Sugey. So S as in Sam, U as in umbrella, G as in good, E as in elephant, Y. So suheyhealth.com.
Excellent. And what's on your site, Sugey?
So on my site is currently, it promotes more about being certified as a holistic health coach. But I'm starting to add in my blog like more sports psychology, because before this, that's what got me into psychology and sport and all of that, was the holistic alternative approach of the humanistic approach on people, really looking at the person as a whole. So this is where sports psychology will be added to this many layers that I'm going to continue on with. But that is my current website.
Okay, excellent. Well, we're going to close out right here, ladies and gentlemen. You've been listening to Sugey Gomez. Go check her out at suheyhealth.com. And did I say that right?
You did.
Yes, go check her out at suheyhealth.com. This is the place to be. We're going to open the new year right and really make this thing happen. Is there, if anyone had a question, what is an email? How would they find you if they wanted to ask you a question or anything like that?
Yeah, they can easily find me on Instagram at Sugey Health, or an email would be contact@sugeyhealth.com.
Sports parents, if you're looking for a program to help develop your student athlete, check out my course, The Edge, showing and helping the student athlete how to take effective action, developing discipline, showing them how to develop a growth mindset and expand their mind in the form of reflective thinking. This is the place you want to be. This is course. I want you to work through this course with your student athlete. It's not for them to go at it alone. This is a gap. This is a way to bridge the gap between the student athlete and sports parent and the student athlete and the coach. Check out my course, The Edge, at sportsmastery.thinkific.com. I'll also have a link in the show notes.